and we'll do this whole field. I'll move that out of the way. Now, Tri-State does give you the option to incorporate actual yield. So now you're able to utilize the actual yield within the yield monitor data for that season within your yield recommendation. So if you want to do a 1 year, let's say, and let's say we want to build, our yield goes 225. Hey, when everybody comes into the meeting, if you wouldn't mind, I know most of you are already in here, make sure that you have your audio muted so we don't have a lot of background noise. And I've got somebody that's really loud on my end. I'm not seeing who it is, though. If everybody would, just go over there and mute their audio side. I'd appreciate it. So this is the modified tri-state. And again, that's the Indiana, Michigan, Ohio area. It also gives you the option to do like so many of the land-grant schools, do a 2-year build. But it will also ask if you want to use the actual yield to compensate for what your takeoff is for that particular year, to adjust for what your P levels would be in this case, based upon what they came up with for the P level, how much P was pulled out of the soil per bushel of corn or beans or whatever the case may be for what you're working with, and adjust that accordingly. And then they also allow you to set your critical level of ppm for FOSS. So if we came in here and set that at some level, then you're going to have your critical level at 25 based upon the tri-state. So tri-state's the first one I'm showing here where you can actually throw the actual yield into this. And I'm just bringing to your attention that you're doing sufficiency, you're doing some build, and you're adjusting off the actual yield here as well by setting your critical levels as well. So that's the tri-state modified set of recommendations. I'll show another one here. The reason why I'm not doing all these at one time because I got confused because there's so many of them. But I'll drop down here to just the regular tri-state for P and K and just run the regular tri-state. The previous one was tri-state. And this one will not use actual yield. It does like a lot of the other land grants in the fact that you've got the crop year 1, what the purpose is, and what the yield goal is. And then it's basically sufficiency. And you can do a 2-year build with a 1-year application if that's what you wanted out of year, whereas your second year is just an option for you to build for the 1-year app. But there's nothing in here in regards to the actual yield data itself, to the actual yield off of a monitor. So I'm going to cancel that one and jump back out, and I'm going to take you into one that's got probably one of the more open-ended ones that I know of, and it's Crop IMS, and I'm going to go to the PREC. And this one gives you the option. This is, I've gotten permission from these guys to show all this and everything, of course, but the fact of it is, this is one that's a private company that has a P recommendation equation that's set up, Crop IMS for P, and you, of course, would come through here and set whatever your crop would be, just like what we've seen in so many of the others, what the purpose, what the yield goal would be. And then as you build up down through, or as you go down through here, you have your crop year 2, and it asks how many apps you want to build. You have the option, if you're on a 4-year build, you could do that out to 4. If you want to just do 1, if you want to do that off just a 1-year build as far as that goes. But it also has the option to incorporate in the actual yield. So if you had the actual yield data in the season for what you were looking back from to build this, they would actually use the actual yield analysis layer to come in here and compensate for the P205 taken out of the ground based upon that, or your K2O, whichever rec you'd be running. But on the rec option, this is where it gets different. You've got build maintenance all the way down through the build only. And in this case, you also have, if we go with build only, you have the option to set at, the 25 is real common up in that part of the country, or you can do a custom to build to that. And the ideal of that is that you could set a crop removal only at the optimum level, then you could set a buffer cutoff. So if we did this at 25, and where I'm going with all this, everybody, this is as wide open as you want it to be, and that's why I'm using the Crop IMS one, because I don't, in all my years of training, this is one of the more open-ended ones for showing people what they can utilize of all their data. So if you set your P build-up level to a 25, and you come up here and you say you're going to set this to 5 years for the buffer, so, sorry, let's delete that, I want the buffer at 5, then basically what it's going to do is go in there and crop removal only from the optimum level to the buffer cutoff level. And if the P level was set at 25, which is what we have our optimum set to there, then the cutoff buffer, in this case, is 5. So the recommendation would be crop removal for P values from 25 to 35, or 25 to 30 here, because 5 is our buffer. And then anything over 30 would not get any fertilizer recommendation at all. So you have the ability to customize this recommendation and set your optimum level wherever you desire based upon the parameters, you know, whether the guy owns the land, whether it's on a short-term lease, depending upon prices of the fertilizers for that crop season. And it's so wide open for what you can utilize within the value that you can show to your growers out there for setting up and building these recommendations. I'm getting some more background noise here. So that's one of the other options. But if we come in here and do build and maintenance, which is another option you have, you can go through and build your number of applications, of course, and you have these options to set up your P buildup level. You can customize that. Let's say we want to build at 30 and we want to set that buffer at 5. Then it's just like what I said before. It's going to go through and remove only from the optimum level to the border to the buffer cutoff level. So in this case, we customized it and we pushed it up 5 units. So it's going to do the up to optimum of 30, and then the cutoff would be the buffer of 5. So it's going to go up to 35. So 30 to from 30 up to 35, it's going to be crop removal, and anything over 35 would not get any fertilizer recommendation at all. So again, you can get pretty aggressive with this for as far as you want to go out on being able to apply more and be somewhat more liberal in applying product in the first year of a multi-year, or the first year utilizing yield of a recommendation equation. And again, you've got the option to use that actual yield in order to set this up. You can do maintenance only with the soil test optimum cutoff, and that basically would get you very much like the first one, whereas you're going in looking at the current crop, looking at the soil test for the over optimum buffer cutoff for no application on that one. And again, there's so many ways to utilize this. It's only endless to what you can think up that you want to incorporate in here for the actual equations themselves. And so much of this, when you're using the actual yield for crop removal rather than the average, is going to give you a more accurate recommendation, of course, based upon how accurate that actual yield data was that you had in that current year that you're utilizing. So, as I stated before, you've got options to do this through sufficiency, maintenance, build, and this one combines all 3 of those, or all 4 of those, I should say, because you can do build maintenance with all your other options here, as well as the maintenance only, as well as your maintenance only with soil test optimum cutoff, and build only. So there's many different options for doing this and getting what you're trying to build to. And again, coming back to, as we all know on this presentation, if a farmer or grower had a piece of ground that's going to be rental ground, you're probably only going to do something that's going to be sufficiency. But if he wants to get pretty aggressive and lay a bunch of fertilizer down in the first year, and possibly first year and second year for a 4-year rotation, then this is where you could come in here and push it to the limits based upon fertilizer prices over the next few years of what you might estimate might go through the roof or whatever. So there's many options here to be able to set up your recommendations to compensate for what that grower's needs are, and based upon the economy, based upon pricing, based upon that structure. So with what I've shown thus far, you've got all the way where you can use these with just sufficiency. You can do sufficiency and maintenance. You can do just maintenance. You can do maintenance and build, and you can do other combinations, and you can utilize the actual yield thereof. Now, I'm going to run in here because I've ran through several of these thus far. And on this particular, let me get this maximized. On this particular set of data that I've got, I ran this through, and I used Tri-State and Crop IMS. And just to show you some differences here, this is the Tri-State rec on this field for potash. And you're going to notice over there, and basically that's just sufficiency, because it's not the modified, it's just the sufficiency one. So it's calling for 2,467 pounds of total product in a 1-year build using the actual yield takeoff from the, actually it's just sufficiency minus the yield. So it's calling for 2,467 pounds to just keep it at that sufficient level. Now, if we come down here and run this through with the crop IMS one, where you're building it somewhat aggressive, and the yield goals and everything, you'll notice everything's 260 and all of the input parameters are the same. The only thing is that I shot this up, and I know it's somewhat high, but the K custom build-up level I set to 170, 1 year build using the actual yield, to put a bunch of that potash down in year 1 to be utilized for the next few years in the 4-year cycle in this case. So this could be, and in this case you'll notice that it's popped it up, whatever we were there before, the sufficiency was a little under 2,300 pounds. This has popped it up to roughly 7,000 pounds, but you're putting down what you need using the 1 year of yield, actually whatever the years of yield that you had up to that point within the model. But it's adjusting for that, what the takeoff is of the actual yield in those years to compensate for that on that particular recommendation. So everybody, there are multiple ways to do this as far as running through creating these recommendations and utilizing the fertility, and the fertility to a level to where you're moving beyond just sufficiency to maintenance, and you're moving on into the build, and you're moving on into where you can use any combination thereof. And again, I would come back to the fact that you can adjust this however you want to and however you want to set it up. I know in my years that of teaching and training, I've seen a lot of recommendations that are just sufficiency, and some of them have yield, some of them have build in them, but very few of them have actual yield adjustment based off the yield monitors themselves. And the idea being that if the farmer's collecting the data, and if it's good, accurate, and valid data, then we can build recommendations for you to do something like this right here, to go in here and create recommendations where we can adjust off of that based upon whatever parameters that you want to utilize within the model, and incorporating the actual yield within that as well, with any option that you want to include in here. Now, I've shown you a bunch of the different land grant schools and what they can do, but I know a lot of you have a lot of your own equations and a lot of tasks and everything. So if there's anything that you have that you see off of this that you want to utilize as far as changing your equations, please get with us as soon as possible, because you all know as well as I do it takes a few weeks to a month or even more to get those adjusted and built and applied back to you guys. But I would also throw out to everybody that if you saw any of this, like through the Iowa State, K-State, Modified K-State, Modified Tri-State, and so on, that you might want to use and just do some comparisons, just contact your account manager or Duncan Mayer directly, and we can assign those to you from the land grant schools, and you can utilize those as well. And I know this is kind of a short and quick session, but there's not a lot more that I've got to really to throw out to everybody, other than the fact that to be able to use the actual yield, that's got to be assigned to you in the actual recommendation equation itself. And it's really not that big of a deal to do. It just takes a little time. And if you want that to be incorporated within that, then let us know, and we can put that in there so you can utilize the actual yield for that. Now, I don't know of anybody doing what I'm going to talk about next, but the theory is that as we move forward, you can build these equations out to where you can utilize your base soil test year, what you had applied, the as-applied data, the actual as-applied data, what the yield removal is for the next year, based upon for P and K, based upon whatever your cropping practice might be, and then all these combinations thereof of the build-up maintenance, sufficiency only, and so on down the list. The idea being that as we're now moving into 20-plus years of a great many of you and more of utilizing fertility recommendations through our system, you could get these things much more accurate by utilizing the yield and going in and building your build-up levels, or however you want to set this on the custom application or the custom build-ups and so on, to be able to adjust for those accordingly. So just keep it in the back of your mind that what you've been doing, nothing wrong with that, of course, but that's not the only limitation for what you can adjust for out across your fields. And certainly on the fertility side, we can do a lot more than what I've seen a lot through the years doing with just the sufficiency models. But actual yield can also be incorporated into those actual recommendations themselves. With that being said, pretty much what I wanted to give to everybody, and just show to everybody what opportunities there are out there. Just kind of open your eyes up to some other things that's being utilized in the industry, and being utilized for value, especially for your growers, because we can get this as accurate as what the data is that you have to adjust out here for these recommendations. And with that being said, I'll take any questions that anybody might have, because that's basically what I wanted to cover. Does anybody have any questions at all? Okay, I will assume no, so I will have a recording of this, and I'll put it up on our website if anybody wants to go back through and listen to that thing again. But nonetheless, that's really what I wanted to cover, and I appreciate everybody coming in this morning, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.